everybody, this is Wikstrand. So let's talk for a second about this thing with press junkets. When Liam Neeson was doing the press junket for Taken 2, he was asked, as he was probably many times during these things, will there be a Taken 3? To Aftonbladet's reporter, he said that it will not be a third Taken movie. You have my word on it. Well, Liam Neeson was doing the press junket for Taken 3 3 years later, which must have been super awkward, and he was asked the same question by the same guy. And he said, yes, I did say that to you. But then they offered me this huge amount of money, and they also said that I could, dictate almost everything that would happen in the movie, and I don't have to go to, some other country and doing that stuff, so I could just film it here in California. And I said, yeah, okay, I'll do it. Now, you could blame good old Liam Neeson for, prostituting his talent for a check, but considering that if he would be standing on this pile of money that they offered him for this movie, he would stand on a pedestal that was higher than Kilimanjaro. So I'm not going to blame him for that. I will, however, blame him for not doing a movie that properly, ended the Taken saga, which was a pretty open goal actually to do, but they decided not to do that. What am I talking about? What is this movie about? Why is this movie a little bit underwhelming, do I think? But it is still better than the second one, I think. This is Taken 3. By the way, nobody gets taken, so the title lies super duper. Mills is trying to right the wrongs of the past, and is trying to build better relationships with Kim, his daughter, and Eleanor, his ex-wife. Eleanor's marriage with Stuart, we'll get to him in a second, is on shaky ground, and he's been acting a little bit weird lately. And all of a sudden, Eleanor is dead. And unfortunately for Brian Mills, he's found, at her body. But Brian flees the scene of the crime, and the LAPD is now hot on his trail, led by Sam Gerard. I mean, this guy played by Forrest Whitaker, who, tells his underlings to search every residence, gas station, warehouse, hen house, outhouse, and doghouse for Richard Kimball. I mean, Brian Mills. Basically speaking, this is The Fugitive with Brian Mills. And Brian must, of course, uncover who has killed Eleanor and why. And he has to, stay away from the cops. And he's also trying to feed the cops, what he has found out about, her life and stuff like that. So it is a lot of hiding from the police and being chased by the bad guys' goons and fighting them off and stuff like that. Now, here is what I think that this was a mistake to do. Because I agree that, you can't do the, who is being taken this time kind of a thing, because it was basically a running gag at this point. But I still believe that a better idea behind this movie would have been if you would have had a wife or a son or a cousin or a brother of the sheikh, that bought Kim when she was taken in the first movie. They're rich with oil money and stuff like that, and coming to America on these diplomatic passports. They have diplomatic immunity, and they're deep in with some rich politicians and stuff like that. You could have done a lot of things with that, with them targeting the Mills family as a revenge for the patriarch's death, blah blah blah. That is the story you should have told, not this fugitive ripoff. But it is still an entertaining movie where Liam Neeson punches, kicks, and blows his adversaries up and doing his tough guy shtick. And if that is your wheelhouse, this movie will be quite okay for you, because he has done better movies, but he sure as hell has done worse movies. And at least this movie has a budget, unlike the some of the low budget things he has done in recent years, which has been, in my opinion, not very good. So who is directing this movie? It's Oliver Megaton, the man with probably the coolest name in Hollywood history. Now, Oliver Megaton hates one thing: long takes. He loathes them. So he's rapidly editing this thing to the point where you cannot understand who is doing what to who, why, or how. And it has almost become a meme how rapidly edited this movie is. That was very distracting and made this movie look a little bit, I don't know, weird and it didn't look very good. At least it looked intense, but it was also very confusing sometimes, especially, you know, that freeway sequence that is, you know, famously chopped to absolute bits. But this is a pretty decent, you know, whodunit scenario where you follow, you know, his deduction and stuff like that. But why does this movie have to involve Brian Mills? Liam Neeson's character in this movie could have just been called Putz McGee and it would have made equal amount of sense so that this movie is the third Taken movie. But this is about as much of a cash grab that you could ever get. But is this movie worth your time? Yeah, probably, even though it's a little bit too long for its own good. And let's talk for a second about Stuart. Stuart St. John was, of course, the new husband of Eleanor when she divorced Brian before, you know, the first movie, and, you know, they've been living together for we don't know how long time. But anyway, in those movies where he was played by Sander Berkeley. And in this movie, he's played by Dougherty Scott. I didn't realize that this Stuart and this Stuart was supposed to be the same person. They didn't look nothing alike, and Dougherty Scott is 10 years younger than, you know, Sander Berkeley. Why couldn't they, you know, have somebody who was the same age or looked a little bit like Sander Berkeley? Because the thing was that Stuart was such an unimportant character that recasting him just made the whole thing a little bit confusing. I mean, I thought that, you know, this Stuart was, you know, some new husband or something like that. I didn't, you know, pay attention to what Stuart was called in, you know, the first movie or anything like that. I was told this several years later. Oh, they kind of, you know, recasted him. And I was like, what? So that's supposed to be the same character and we didn't know? Oh dear, oh dear. Anyway, we have some more than decent action sequences, fighting sequences, car chases, you name it, they have it, and it is pretty damn fine. Even though I think this movie shouldn't have been a PG-13 and the, you know, rating hurts this movie ever so slightly. But you do care about the story and you do care about, you know, the characters and how they're going to end up. And the fact that Kim is pregnant and Liam Neeson kind of doesn't know that, I think played into the story quite nicely, and they included her in quite a smart way actually. And I like the fact that he used, you know, his ex-CIA buddies a lot more in this movie than previous movies. So the movie moves us around pretty nicely, but then the movie ended in what I thought was pretty spectacular sense, but it was also a little of a bleh finish to the whole thing, which I thought was, why? Why do you do this ending? This is exactly why you shouldn't have done this story, I thought. But I still think that this movie was better than Taken 2. Not by a large margin or anything like that, but it was still a better movie, I thought, because it didn't rehash that many, you know, things from the first movie. This was more of its own thing. In fact, as I said before, this should have really been, you know, a standalone Liam Neeson movie written by Luc Besson, directed by Oliver Megaton, but not called Taken 3. Maybe I actually would have thought that the movie was better in that case. They've already, you know, recasted poor old Stuart for, you know, reasons that will remain unclear. Forrest Whitaker's murder investigator slash cop wasn't the most memorable character in this movie, but at least he added some star power to a role that basically could have been played by anybody, and he's walking around there with his chess piece and, you know, thinking about psychological things regarding this case. It was a little bit of a cliche, but at least Forrest isn't phoning this one in. This is probably one of the purest definition of a totally fine movie that I've ever seen. If you like Liam Neeson, you will probably like this movie. If you don't like Liam Neeson's shtick, this is a movie that you can easily skip. It was pretty damn fine. I give Taken 3 53 points. It's a decent action thriller, a pretty classic story that we've seen lots of times before. Even though we've seen this story played out in other movies in better ways. It's of course not as good as The Fugitive, but if you would like to have a better movie in the genre of guy trying to prove that he isn't, you know, the killer and stuff like that, see the movie U.S. Marshals, who is actually a sequel to Fugitive, who is actually a pretty damn good movie, better than this one, and a pretty underrated movie. This one, as I said, is a completely fine movie. Nothing more, nothing less. So which one of the Taken sequels do you think is the better ones? Taken 2 or Taken 3? Comment below and I'll see you next time from, well, so-and-so reviewing, well, such and such. Thank you for watching. Thank you very much.